Well, welcome back everybody. Today I'm doing a Alithia Marie style video because we're currently doing some home renovations and my hair hasn't been washed for a couple of days and I haven't got any makeup on and I am not looking my best, put it that way. So I definitely didn't feel camera worthy today, but I did want to film this video. So I am behind the camera instead of in front of it today. So in honor of the fact that I'm taking on Alithia's video style for the day, I thought I would replicate a video she did recently, which was her best blind buys. I have 10 fragrances to talk about here today, and as somebody who doesn't consider herself to be much of a blind buyer, that's quite a lot. I was quite shocked at how many there are here, and there's obviously several others that I've already decluttered and sold on because they didn't work for me. But these were the ones that did work and they stayed. So without further ado, I'm just going to get started. The first one I want to talk about is a vintage fragrance, and this is Arpege by Lanvin. I'm hoping I'm saying that right. I'm pretty sure I'm not. This is a vintage style fragrance. It's an aldehydic floral amber. It opens very bright and you get the aldehydes in the top, and then it dries down to this really beautiful vintagey floral amber, and the amber accord in this is just absolutely stunning. It's so smooth and velvety without being too heavy. So actually I have been reaching for this a little bit in spring because it actually does sing in the warmer weather, which I was surprised about. I thought I might have preferred to wear it in the winter time or the cooler months. It will definitely work in winter and autumn as well, but it's working really well for me in the spring. The next one is a bit of a cheapie. This is called Diva, and it's by Emanuel Ungaro, which I think is a designer. So this is a vintage style fragrance, but it's still readily available, and as I said, it's actually quite affordable. So this one is an aldehydic floral as well, but it's more focused on rose, where I think the Arpege has more sort of white florals, jasmine, that sort of thing. So this one seems to be more centered around rose, and it is a really beautiful fragrance, totally underrated. I haven't worn it that much because I did buy it, you know, sort of as we were coming into the cooler months, and I sort of didn't pick it up, and I thought I'd wear it in the cooler months, but I ended up putting it in a different drawer when I rearranged my perfumes, and it sort of got lost and forgotten about. So I am going to try and wear this actually over the spring because I think it'll work really beautifully in the warmer weather. The next one is one that I've talked about probably ad nauseum on my channel. This is a really beautiful amber fragrance as well by perfumer Liz Moores. The inspiration for this fragrance was her cat. So she's managed to create an element of this amber accord that is just so fluffy, but it also smells a little bit animalic and resembles cat fur. So it's very interesting. It's not for everybody, but I just find it to be the most comforting amber scent. And it's definitely up there as one of my favorites to wear, particularly in the cooler weather. It just forms this beautiful, enveloping, intoxicating cloud around you, and it's just, there's just something about it that is so warming and comforting and peaceful. So I really enjoy it. The next one is also an amber scent. Clearly I have a thing for ambers. This is called Origin Story, and it's by perfumer Sarah Horowitz from the US. I can't remember if this is an all-natural scent or if there are synthetics in it, but in any case, she is a cruelty-free brand, so no animal products. And this one's really spicy and quite woody. I get lots of patchouli from this as well. I will say that I feel like I get things like cinnamon and maybe a bit of nutmeg or something like that. I feel like I get those really brown kind of spices that you find in your pantry, even though they aren't specifically listed as notes, but that's what I feel I get from this fragrance. It's very calming and meditative, and that's why I wonder, I can't remember if it's a natural perfume, because it has that kind of natural perfume feel to it. And I just really love it. I love to wear it at night time. I love wearing it to bed. I love wearing it to yoga, because even though it looks, judging by the color of the juice, it looks like it's quite dark, it's actually not that heavy in terms of wear. So I just love it. I've had this for a couple of years now, and I haven't really worn it in the last 12 months, so I'm going to pull this out again and start wearing it, particularly because we're coming into the warmer months, and it wears quite well in warmer circumstances, even though it also clearly does well in wintertime as well. But it's just not that heavy, so I feel like it'll work well as we come into spring and summer. Zara Horowitz, if you struggle with indie perfumers and you're struggling to find sort of indie fragrances that you think gel with you, I highly recommend checking out Zara Horowitz. Maybe not this particular fragrance, but there are other fragrances in her line that are just absolutely stunning. I think there's one called Veil, I think there's one called Hereafter, and one called Now, and they're all just these really beautiful, subtle, delicate floral fragrances, and I think that they're definitely worth trying and sampling if you are wanting something different from the more mass-produced stuff or the more high-end niche. These are quite affordable too, they aren't that expensive, so definitely recommend getting some samples from Zara Horowitz if you're looking for something a little bit different, but you struggle with most indie kind of fragrances. Also, I'm really sorry about the background noise, but as I mentioned, we're currently doing renovations, and there's some construction going on at the moment, and it's quite loud, so I do apologise for that. This next fragrance is actually one that arrived today, and recently somebody posted a comment on one of my videos talking about this fragrance, and I decided I would check it out. And then, as it so happens, somebody posted this bottle for sale on one of the Facebook groups, and it was really affordable, and so I decided to grab it because I thought if I like it, then I'm not going to be able to get another bottle at that price. So this is L'Orpheline by Serge Lutens, and this is a really interesting fragrance. I'm really glad I picked this one up. So I do consider this to be a success, even though I haven't actually spent a lot of time with it yet. So that opinion may still change. But from the first sniff I've just had today, because it arrived today, I'm actually really liking it. I'm really pleased with this. This is a musky, woody fragrance that has a very subtle, smoky incense note in the base. And how do I describe it? It feels translucent. It feels light and airy, very clean and quite crisp, even with that sort of smoky incense happening. The smokiness isn't too much, and I think most of you know that I struggle a little bit with smoky scents, but this one I really am enjoying today because I'm wearing it at the moment, and it's just quite spellbinding. It's very unique, and I haven't really smelled anything quite like it, so I'm very glad I picked this one up, especially at the price that I got it for. The next one I wouldn't consider to be a success for me, but it ended up being a success for Matt, and this is Sandalwood by Zara. I don't know if this one's available anymore. I think this was, oh, maybe it is, it might be. It's the one with the 4 instead of the A in the name. So the reason that this sort of turned out to be a fail for me was because I think I was expecting like a really soft, creamy sandalwood. I was expecting it to be very woody, I think maybe with some florals in there, which, you know, there is that, but the problem for me is that this resembles quite closely Santal 33, and I do not get along with Santal 33. However, Matt had a sample of Santal 33 and he loved it, and he wasn't really prepared to spend the money on the full bottle, and of course I wasn't going to buy it because I don't like it at all on me. So when this cropped up and when I realized it smelled very similar to Santal 33, it's not quite the same. I feel like this one might be a bit airier. It's not as creamy, so I feel like this one might be a little bit more woody, which, you know, I like this better than Santal 33. It's not as green either, I don't think. So in any case, I didn't particularly enjoy this one, but Matt likes to wear this. Okay, next up we have one that was a nervous blind buy. This is Dzing. I feel like I always need to say it like that because it has an exclamation mark in the title. By Artisan Parfumeur. Sorry, that was just really silly. And it's one of the old bottles as well, which I'm really happy about. Not necessarily because the formulation is that much different. I actually haven't smelled the newer version. But Camille and Chris from Making a Stink did a whole video on comparing the older version with the newer one. And I think they concluded there were some subtle differences, but largely the same fragrance and nothing to worry about. So, but I picked this up really cheap. I think the person who was selling this didn't realize what they had. They don't think they were a frag head. So it was very reasonably priced and it smells absolutely divine. This is a really beautiful animalic leather scent. The leather is very soft. I want to say soft, but it still smells like leather, but everything in this fragrance is just blended so beautifully. I sort of didn't really pay much attention to this fragrance at first because I'd heard that it was quite animalic, and I was a bit put off by that because I don't typically gravitate towards animalic scents. That's sort of changing a little bit now. Definitely more recently I've started to appreciate those animalic notes a little bit more, and hence why I think I have a much better appreciation for vintage style fragrances and fragrances like Chanel No. 5, which previously I did not get along with at all whatsoever. The inspiration for this fragrance was the circus. So it does have that element of animals and the smells that come along with those, as well as all of the other fun things you find at the circus. So there's also a bit of sweetness in there. It is a really stunning sort of ambery leather fragrance, and I'm very glad to have this. I have been contemplating getting a full bottle of the newer version just so that I have it, because I think it's been discontinued now. You can still find it around, but I think realistically I don't need another 100 mils of this. This is about 30 mils remaining in this bottle, and that's probably enough given how quickly I move through fragrances these days. Okay, so next up is a fragrance that I bought in a sale from a perfumery in another state, but in Australia. I had never had a chance to smell it previously, but it was going for such a good price. I think it was about 50% off. It was an amazing sale, and so I decided to grab it because I'd heard really good things about it. This is Chypre 1942 by Nobile 1942. This is an absolutely stunning floral Chypre fragrance, and if you want to sort of, I guess, get a feel for what a vintage floral Chypre smells like, then this is a really good reference, I think, given that this is a modern composition, but it replicates, or you could quite easily place this, you know, in an earlier decade, and it wouldn't be out of place. So this doesn't actually have oak moss in it. I think they use patchouli in place of the oak moss. I think the florals in here are mostly white florals, and it does dry down to be a little bit soapy, which I quite like. It has a beautiful soapiness about it, which isn't too sharp. There are no sharp edges in this fragrance. It is just so stunning, so beautifully blended. It really does replicate the style of those vintage style Chypres. And I know that you can get, you can pick up older Chypre style fragrances, vintage fragrances, relatively cheap, depending on which ones you're trying to get, of course, on the internet or whatever. But the problem with buying vintage fragrances is that a lot of the times the top notes are very muted. But what I love about this one is that you are able to get that full Chypre experience, because you get that really bright opening of the citruses, the bergamot, and I think there's mandarin in the top as well. But it's not too citrusy. It's not like a Shalimar with that lemon just like really kicks you in the opening. It's just soft and flowy and it just develops so beautifully on the skin. It's just so natural, the progression of this fragrance. I can't speak highly enough of this particular fragrance. I just think it's absolutely stunning, and I'm very, very glad that I picked it up. So the next one was kind of a rash purchase. I was making another purchase from the Dior website recently, and because they had just released a new Miss Dior, and I'd heard sort of mixed reviews about that, if you spent a certain amount of money, you got sent a 5ml sample of that. And I went onto the website to pick up a bottle of New Look 1942 and saw that they had this deal going. So I decided to add a couple of other things to cart in order to get the required minimum purchase amount. And one of the other things I added was Dioramour. I've heard some things about this. I haven't heard a lot about this particular fragrance in the line. I mean, obviously we hear a lot about Ombre Nuit and Gris Dior and Fève. But this isn't one that I'd heard many people talk about. And then when I looked up the notes and realised that it was largely an iris fragrance, and I was recently going through a bit of an iris phase, I think I still am in that phase, quite frankly, I decided that I would pick this one up. So this is iris and violet, and it's quite a cool fragrance. So the iris in here, and I think the violet does this too, it gives it a bit of a coolness. It's not a very warm, comforting, enveloping iris. But that said, it is absolutely stunning. It's really, really beautiful. I think there's jasmine in here too, which I think I get more in the top, in the very opening. I'd have to say that the opening of this fragrance is my least favorite part. Once it's on my skin for a few minutes though, it transforms and I get more of that iris, more of the violet. It's a little bit powdery, but not too much. And it's just, I think it's beautifully balanced. It's extremely elegant, very, very elegant. I mean, I'd put it in the same ballpark as Gris Dior if you're trying to compare it to something, even though Gris Dior is a completely different fragrance. Obviously that's a Rouge Chypre, and this is not that. It doesn't have a prominent rose note. I'm not sure if it has rose in it at all, but this is beautiful. It's very elegant, very sophisticated. And I need to spend more time with it, but so far I'm just absolutely loving it. It is a really gorgeous fragrance, and I consider it to be a successful blind buy because I have no concerns about whether I will wear this or not. And last but not least, we have another Serge. This is Fil de Joie, and I know I'm not saying that right. This is a very, very, very sexy fragrance. It is based on night blooming jasmine and musk, basically, and it is very, very sensual, very sexy. It has, I mean, that muskiness in here is very natural musk smelling, I think, but it is very heady, and it has like a slightly animalic tinge to it, not like a poopy animalic. It's more, you know, bedroom smells, to put it bluntly. So it's as I said, it's very intoxicating, very sexy, very sensual, and I've only worn it twice, and I've only worn it at home. The opening shocked me a little bit. The opening sort of reminded me of the smell of cough syrup, children's cough syrup. It has that very almost cherry, artificial cherry like tone to it, but that kind of passes and it warms up really nicely on the skin and just becomes this very skin-like, musky jasmine. And this is very, I think it's a very realistic night blooming jasmine scent. So with obviously other things thrown in there, which again, it has that cough syrup scent to it in the opening. It won't be for everybody because that jasmine is very strong, but it's stunning. Go Serge. And also, I mean, I just love the color of it. Look at the color of that juice. It's just incredible. Such a deep cherry red, or maroon, maybe you would call that. Maroon. Anyway, so that is Fil de Joie by Serge Lutens. So there you have it. These are my successful blind buys. over the last, I'd say 12 months, 12 to 18 months or so, maybe 2 years. I think Origin Story I actually bought closer to 2 or 2.5 years ago now. I would like to thank Alithia for the inspiration on the video format, given I was definitely not feeling camera worthy today. And also for the idea for the video itself, given that this was her video that I just completely ripped off. So thanks, Alithia. Hope you don't mind that I did that. And I'd also like to just give a quick shout out to Cody, who is the candle maker for the candle that you've seen burning in the background of this video. He is just an absolutely delightful human, and I just want to give him all the support that I can, because I do love his product, but also he's just a very special, lovely human being. And I do have a discount code which he gave to me ages ago when we did a live stream. I'm pretty sure that's still valid. I don't think it expired, so I'll put it down in the description box below. I don't think he ships internationally, but if you are in Australia and you want to check out his candles, then that's a good way to save a little bit of money on that purchase. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining me. If you liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up and let me know what your successful blind buys have been. See you in the next one. Bye.